Ja, gjesten som kommer inn nå, hun gikk i kloster da hun var 17 år, men forlot nonnelivet etter 7 vanskelige år med et løfte om aldri mer å vende tilbake til religionen. I dag er hun en av verdens fremste religionshistorikere. Please welcome Karen Armstrong. Welcome to Scandinavia, Karen Armstrong. When we saw this clip, it's very typical that when we talk about religion, we tend to talk about God.
Yes, and the first time we hear about God is when we're about that age, at the same time as we hear about Santa Claus. The difference is that people's ideas of Santa Claus develops and grows over time and matures, whereas people's idea of God remains often very at an infantile level.
And I would say you're very qualified to talk about this. When you were 17 years old, you left your family and you became a nun.
Yes.
And in hindsight, would you say that was a good idea?
I wouldn't have missed it, put it that way, because I wouldn't be here tonight if I hadn't done that. But I was far too young to make that kind of decision. I was 17 years old. My parents were horrified, and I'm really sorry for what I did to my parents, because they felt they ought to let me go, because they thought if I didn't try it out, I'd spend all my university years sort of waiting and rebelling against what I was doing. So to let me do it...
They were not like Mari's parents, very religious persons.
No, they weren't. We were Catholics. We went to Mass, but we went as early as possible to get it out of the way, as it were. And then they would fall joyously on the gins and tonics, you know, before lunch. So the idea of becoming a nun was appalling to them. And of course, it was very sad for them because they didn't see me. They could see me once every 6 months. And when I left, I was in such a state. After 7 years, I decided I had to go. And I was sick for about 7 years with depression, anorexic, sort of suicidal. I could not find my way here. And I think they thought I'd gone forever, that I'd ruined myself. And so I'm sorry for what I put them through.
You became very infatuated with religion, and after a while, it took a while before you became interested in religion again.
Well, after I left the convent, I thought I'd never want to have anything to do with religion ever again, because I tried to get to know God, but I was hopeless at praying, which was a bit of a downer for a nun. I mean, you know, we had to spend hours every day on our knees meditating, and I could not do it. I can concentrate on my studies for hours at a time. And this was a cause of corrosive sort of shame for me, because none is nothing but without good prayer, and my prayer was so bad it was off the charts. I used to say to my superiors that I couldn't pray, and they said, "Oh, sister, you know, come, you're always so dramatic about these things. Everyone has an off day from time to time." And I would long to have an off day, because then it would mean that some of my days had been on, and they never were. And I think probably the trouble was that I had such an inadequate idea of God. I didn't think of him as an old man with a beard, or I didn't expect to see visions, but I expected some kind of contact, some kind of answer. And answer came then none. The heavens remained sealed. And so I just fell away from religion altogether for about 13 years. But then I went to Jerusalem to work with an Israeli film company in Jerusalem on the life of St. Paul. It was a 6-parter which I wrote and presented. And there I encountered for the first time Islam and Judaism, because I had known nothing about these other faiths. My experience of religion had been very limited. I thought of Judaism simply as a kind of prelude to Christianity. And as for Islam, I never gave it a thought. But there, suddenly, it was in Jerusalem, and I started studying these faiths then. And
studying the world religions.
Yes.
Have you found you found something in common, didn't you?
Yes. They are all very different, and that's very healthy, because when we're talking about God, as those children were trying to do, we're talking about what is unspeakable, what is utterly transcendent, and our ideas about God or Brahman or Nirvana can only be sort of stumbling attempts. And religious language should be translucent, that you look through them. You don't sort of say that's it, that, you know, that the symbol is the reality. It points beyond itself. So because this transcendence is without limit, therefore everybody's going to experience it and talk about it differently, whether you're a Buddhist or a Hindu. But something they do have in common, and that is that every single one of them says that the test of true spirituality is compassion, is the ability to put yourself in the shoes of the other. Every single one of the major world faiths has sort of developed its own version of what's often called the golden rule. Never treat others as you would not like to be treated yourself.
So that's what they have in common?
That is the common thread.
To sort of leave your ego at the doorstep?
It requires you every day to dethrone yourself from the center of your world and put another there. And Confucius, the first person to formulate the golden rule, as far as we know, said you had to do it all day and every day. Now, in England, we have a kind of a saying, when we've done something nice for somebody, we say, well, that's my good deed for the day, so that you can return for the next 23 hours to your usual greed and selfishness and unkindness. But no, all day and every day, putting yourself to one side and putting yourself with great intelligence. It requires intelligence, imagination, to put yourself in the place of another and all others, not just your own group, not just those you find congenial, but everybody without exception. You see these, the idea of hatred of other religions should be absolute anathema.
Today you have a lot of fundamentalism, but you can you also see fundamentalism outside the religion, or in atheism, for example?
Yes, I think that some of the new atheists, Richard Dawkins or Christopher Hitchens, Sam Harris in the United States, are secular fundamentalists. They have as often as bigoted a view of religion, as limited a view of religion as some religious fundamentalists have of secularism. These are because people are frightened. I've discovered that every single fundamentalist movement in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam is rooted in a profound fear of annihilation. That people feel that liberal or secular establishment wants to wipe them out, and that's not just paranoia, because Jewish fundamentalism took two major steps forward, one after the Holocaust, the Shoah, and the other after the 1973 War of Yom Kippur. And you can see this in Christian and in Islamic fundamentalism too. When people feel their backs are to the wall, they hit out. They're fighting for survival. And very often, in their fear and dismay, they actually distort the tradition that they're trying to defend.
But when you have a sorry, yeah, you first.
Does it also give us, I mean, necessary comfort when it comes to the thought of death, that we're going to die, which is such an overwhelming thought, you know, that religion is actually, it's a good product. And if it hadn't existed already, then somebody would have sooner or later come up with it.
Certainly, the fear of mortality, which we alone among the animals have to deal with, has been a major preoccupation with the growth of religion. But it's interesting that only two of the major world religions, Christianity and Islam, concentrate and on the afterlife. Others are very much more agnostic about afterlife, or just
but it still gives you comfort.
It can do, yes, it can do if you work at it. But it's not just a question of popping down to church and singing a couple of hymns, excuse me, you know, or psalms. Or, that won't necessarily do it. You have, I think the comfort comes when you let the ego go. It's ourselves that make us frightened and make us afraid, make us angry, make us hate others when we feel under threat. And so, and that's when we sort of, we wake up in the morning and think of all the things that make me unhappy or that make us feel that we're hard done by. It's our sense of self, an inflated sense of self, which is the cause of most of our pain.
I know there is a Russian director who said that follow the person who is looking for the truth. When he finds it, run away. And this is, that's what scares, I think, everybody with the religion, that they have the answers. Why can't we? Or every religion thinks, I have the answer. And we have the answer for everybody.
And today we have the answer because we have science. Yeah. And where is, I mean, is there any room for religion when you have science?
Well, yes.
We know, for example, what happened in Japan.
Yes.
We know that there were earth plates colliding, you know.
And yet, when we look at those people suffering, and we look at what they've still got to go through, and our hearts break for humanity, and we say, why? People doing, and then we see the science can't answer that. Science can't help us to deal with our fears. It's got a different job to do. Science is fantastic, and it has helped us immeasurably, but it can't, and any scientist will tell you, it can't provide us with meaning. We're meaning-seeking creatures. We keep on seeking meaning. I like the Chinese way of talking about the ultimate reality as the way, not the terminus, not the end, but the way to. That is enough. The day by day, divesting yourself of self and pouring yourself out in compassion, practically compassion for others, you find a transcendence, but it always reveals more and more and more.
Thank you so much for being